everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited to have you here. This is the Meeting of the Minds, a greener data panel discussion, and then following this, a cocktail reception. So absolutely stick around for some greener martinis. And it's amazing to see you guys, family, friends, fellow authors in the audience. Thank you for such a great turnout. So many friends coming to support us. Truly grateful. Appreciate you. And I have to say, when we started talking greener data, the folks involved, the list of folks who just stood up and said yes is humbling. We have such a diverse crowd, from OTTs to subsea to terrestrial cables and the data centers that house them. And a lot of incredible people behind those networks. All of us tied together, not just physically by cross connections, but passionately by the desire to leave this earth more sustainable for our children and their children thereafter. And yes, that sounds like a tall order, especially with certain looming deadlines. But if anyone can do it, it's the technologists, the innovators, the leaders here at ITW, the leaders right here on this stage and in this room. Speaking of leaders, I have an incredible lineup today of sustainability thought leaders, most of whom have written chapters to our first book, an Amazon bestseller, entitled Greener Data. You might have seen some copies in the front as you walked in. Please help yourself as well, and we'll have a lineup of authors available to sign that copy for you. Most of these fine thought leaders on the stage have contributed to that first book. And I'm very honored and excited to say that all of these fine thought leaders on the stage are contributing to our second book. Yes, guys, Greener Data Volume 2. Coming out Earth Day 2024. We're really excited about that. And we'll be launching it about 11 months from now, April 22nd, 2024. Similar to the first book, it will be a multi-author book, but we'll focus on the following 4 topics: aligning measurements, power and cooling innovations, renewable and clean energy solutions, and the financial and social benefits of going green. These are basically the topics that we're about to dive into. So if there are exciting topics that sound good to you, we're about to hear from our thought leaders. But I wanted to mention first, announcing here at ITW, we have 34 authors already confirmed for Volume 2, and a few more spots available. We're anticipating about 40 contributing authors, decision makers in our field, sharing their innovations, their passion, their success stories, so we in turn can learn, inspire, innovate, partner, collaborate together, breaking down country lines and competitive fears to embrace as global citizens, to empower, and to get greener, faster, and together. One of the byproducts of our Greener Data book series that I am most proud of is that this book, this movement, is for, of, by our industry, including viewpoints from around the world, as you'll hear from today, and throughout our infrastructure system. And it shows that as an industry, we are fighting hard to reduce our carbon emissions, embrace clean and renewable energy solutions, and measure what matters most. So when critics try to write our industry off as a high energy consumption industry without a care for our planet, we are literally writing a proactive response on how we are actively addressing sustainability as a tight-knitted industry with multiple approaches, multiple voices, yet all united with the same passion for our planet, the same passion for greener data. I'm Jamie Scotto-Kataya, founder and CEO of JSA, and the very proud publisher of our Greener Data book series. And I'm going to let our panelists, credible people, introduce themselves, including their own company's focus and commitment on getting greener.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Moran, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Involta. I'm responsible for the growth strategy within Involta. So product marketing and sales is within my organization. And to follow up on Jamie's question around what is our commitment, Involta has always been committed to building greener data centers. We have 12 data centers across the country. Every time we build, we think about the next generation technology we should be using to be more responsible. But we were recently acquired by the private equity firm Carlyle Group. They have a very specific ESG initiative. We're deeply engaged in that. And so I'm excited to say that we're putting the right framework in place to manage the data to ensure that we're being responsible. I'll give you one example just to give you a feel. 42% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions is our goal by 2030.
Thank you, Michelle from Involta. Daniel?
Hi, can everyone hear me? Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Manning, Data Center Energy Strategist with Bloom Energy. We provide clean, reliable power through distributed generation installations. Bloom will have over 1 gigawatt of capacity deployed globally by the end of 2023, and we are the most efficient technology of conversion of natural gas to electricity in the world. We also offer multiple pathways toward decarbonization, whether that's fuel flexibility through things like renewable natural gas and hydrogen, or accommodating different levels of engineering through heat capture and even carbon capture. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Daniel. Bloom Energy. Dean Nelson?
Hi, my name is Dean Nelson. I'm the chairman and founder of Infrastructure Masons, and I also have a day job at Cato Digital. I'm the CEO. We are really focused on uniting the industry on carbon reduction. So this is one of our pillars. So we created the Climate Accord. We have about 208 companies involved, and I believe every company up here is on the Climate Accord, and is all focused on reduction of carbon. To get to carbon neutrality is our first step towards net zero. And we do that through 3 different things: equipment, the stuff that goes into the data center, the materials that make up the building itself, and the actual power that is delivered to that data center consumed to do the work inside of it. So we're all aligned on those elements and creating what we call a carbon, basically a nutrition label, carbon label. Allows us to measure the building, the stuff inside of it, and the power, and actually now see where we are at and drive those things down with things such as Bloom Energy, different types of carbon capture in concrete, steel, circular economy equipment, that type of thing. So,
And the carbon label is a graphic in volume 1. So definitely check it out. I love that thing. Sean Farney?
Hi, everyone. Sean Farney. I like to joke that I'm the chief data center nerd at JLL, and I help convert voice of customer into product strategy, leveraging my hyperscale operations experience. What we are really excited about is carbon accounting. As I look out there at about 4:30, I see this entire audience is also really excited about carbon accounting. We're excited about it because you have to do it now in the EU, right? Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. We've released a product. It is out on proposal phase, so it's real now for carbon accounting for CSRD readiness. You can't measure what you don't manage, and we all know what's coming in the U.S. with the SEC proposal when it closes. So we're excited about this, to be able to measure our impact and make it better.
Thank you, Sean. Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa Reale Elliott. I've actually just recently joined DC Blocks in their marketing team. DC Blocks provides Tier 3 data centers throughout the Southeast, as well as the connectivity and fiber to continue building digital infrastructure. However, I do like to caveat some of my writing in social that views are my own and do not necessarily reflect those of my employer, because I am 1 week in. It would not be fair to either of us at this point to focus too much there. So good news, though, I am also a columnist and contributor for Mission Critical Magazine, where I get to research, write, and speak about all of the amazing companies applying different technologies all the time. And so today, I'll be talking a little bit about some of that mixed in with my own views, because in general, I believe that sustainability should be more than just a corporate mission, but also a personal mission that each of us takes and brings into our workplaces to drive this important topic.
Well said, well said. Kim?
Hi, I'm Kim Gunelius. I am head of Finland for Vern Global. The company was acquired last year. It was called Ficolo before, and we rebranded to Vern Global. We have data centers in Iceland and London, as well as Finland. And I'm co-founder of the data center business in Finland. And we have always focused on sustainability. Day one, we started to use green energy. We have a lot of industry firsts. So, for instance, we raised a green bond that got the highest dark green rating as the first data center in the world. We also reached carbon neutral in 2021. So we have a third-party certification for being carbon neutral. So we have a lot of activities around sustainability, such as implementing solar panels, heat reuse, and sustainability is at the heart of what we do. So last year we were acquired by a company called Digital 9 Infrastructure. And the 9 in Digital 9 comes from the UN Sustainability Goal number 9, which is for digital infrastructure sustainability. So not only is it at the heart of what we've been doing, it is an imperative from the owners now to be sustainable. So that's me.
And I'm going to keep you in the hot seat. We're going to work our way back, Kim. But this question for everyone. We have a huge topic, of course, to tackle, not much time. You talked about net carbon zero, which, part of my love language. So what is the quickest way to get our data center and telecom companies to net zero fastest? Are there any fast wins or at least most effective ways to invest time and energy right now that would yield the biggest carbon reduction? Kim?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on where you are, what your possibilities are. But number one should definitely be to focus on the energy. So if you haven't already done so, start to use green energy. This, can be more difficult in places like London, where we have a data center. But in Iceland, for instance, it's plentiful. So if you can't go to green energy, maybe you should reconsider where you invest. Maybe invest in the Nordics, where it's cooler, where it's easier to be more green. So that's maybe the biggest sort of easy win. If you've already done that, then look at the construction. So consider using existing buildings rather than building new data centers. Consider using green cement. That's kind of coming out now. Not sure if it's available everywhere, but it is coming. So those are the two biggest kind of easy wins.
Great advice. Melissa?
So I want to second and agree with that, because I think so much of what our industry is trying to do to manage and get to net zero focuses almost entirely on the consumption side. We're doing a ton of great things, and I don't want to downplay. Those are all critical, from running servers more efficiently to energy reuse, heat reuse, and circularity, spending less on cooling. All of those are absolutely critical, but we tend to focus so much on the consumption side and forget that even a minimized consumption is still consumption, and to get to net zero, that has to be balanced by production. So, it may not be fast. I don't think there are any fast answers, but truthfully, we won't get there at all if we aren't looking into production through renewable energy sources, microgrid investment, and on-site battery storage, and those kinds of things.
Well said. Sean?
In a word, measurement. And first thing you can do, it's the easiest and perhaps the most effective thing to do, join the iMasons Climate Accord. Be surrounded by your peers, share best practices, get ways to start. This is a huge task. Take the first bite. And as mentioned earlier, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the recording period starts in January. If you don't have a framework, if you haven't started yet, and you have operations in Europe, you're behind. Measure so we can manage. We have to know the how much in this equation and start capturing it. I think we're beyond leading edge. We're bleeding edge in general around measurement. We've been measuring, chasing, reducing, looking at PUE, WE. We're really good at this stuff, but we have to bring it all together and put it in a carbon impact and carbon accounting framework, leveraging really cool new things like carbon tagging from OEMs and your entire supply chain of carbon impact embodied and operational. So start measuring right away.
Amazing. Dean, what do you think? Did Sean read your chapter?
I think you might have. I read it as well. I think we want to be crystal clear here. 80% of the problem is scope 3. So energy is important, right? Efficiencies are important, but in the end, the entire supply chain has to be decarbonized. So that means we have to look at it holistically. So I believe the number one thing that we can do right now is lead with our wallet. So we started the Climate Accord specifically to bring together companies so that we could all speak with one voice. And that voice, it's got $6 trillion of market cap behind it. This is AWS, Google, Meta, Microsoft, 85 co-location companies, product companies. Like, it's just everybody's come together to say, we have to go meet that goal faster. And so I believe if we can go back and influence now, RFPs, specs, contracts with required language and required things, supporting what Sean just said, if that's there's no other answer except to compete and win the business, you have to come back with a sustainable product. But remember, we have both suppliers and consumers on the Climate Accord. They all want to do this. And so if we can come together and do that, I believe we can accelerate that schedule. And there's one other point that I think is extremely important. Yesterday, Mark Ganzi had a quote up on this board. Generative AI and all of the things surrounding it is predicted to triple the capacity for our infrastructure globally. Think about the supply chain challenges we have now, okay? Just getting that built is one thing, but if we do not build that sustainably right now, we're missing the whole point. All of that demand is coming. So that means that every new building that's built must consider low carbon concrete, low carbon steel, right? Circular economy equipment, all the elements around that entire supply chain. If we don't look at that part of it, we're going to miss this goal. So I want to make sure that's crystal clear to everybody.
Amazing. Daniel.
Sure. I want to piggyback on Kim's comment earlier about geography and access to renewable energy. It sounds like a great opportunity to consider a clean distributed generation technology. And for Bloom, as a non-combustion on-site electricity generation provider, we have a sustainability story to tell in almost every market. And in comparison to the peaker plants on the grid that come online to shave the top of the load curve every day, or in comparison to a competitive combustion-based distributed generation technology, Bloom is going to have a measurable decrease in carbon intensity. So that's also an option, because I know there's not always the most flexibility with respect to where we can locate our data centers.
And Michelle.
So tough to add to that list, but I would say in practice, it's a culture change, and it's making sure that that change management is taking place within your organization so that your people are in fact looking at the measurements. They are in fact moving the low-hanging fruit as quickly as possible. So if it's in your design, from an equipment perspective or a material perspective or a supply chain perspective, that everybody's in tune and in sync and working towards that goal.
Well said, well said. So this next question is Kim, Dean, and Michelle in that order. Let's talk power and cooling. What innovations are most interesting to you, Kim?
Well, with regard to power, I'm very interested in the high performance computing and what's happening with the higher density and the temperatures. So if we have to cool all the equipment to a low temperature, we use a lot more energy. If we have the opportunity to run the processes as, at very high temperatures with liquid cooling, which is still, liquid cooling is coming, but I don't see in which exact form it is. So that part I'm really excited about. We can also, with the normal air cooling, where we can now talk to our customers about raising the temperature, which previously we got into a difficult situation with the customers when we said, can we raise the temperature a little bit? Now, when we talk to them and say that, hey, it's good for the planet, we get into a positive mode about thinking about the temperature. So just to use less energy. So that's one thing. There's another thing on the power side that I'm kind of interested in, which is the decoupling of the backup power. So bringing what we have now is one sort of monolithic UPS. Some of the hyperscalers are now bringing smaller batteries to the racks. So this means that we can kind of bring the decision about how green to be closer to where the capacity is used. So we can make the decision on a rack basis on, do we need the backup or not?
Okay, so I'm going to be a little controversial here because in the end of it, I like shedding the light on stuff that doesn't make sense. In my 30 years on the buying side, eBay, Sun, PayPal, Uber, we would go back and build zones of capacity. And those would be 10 megawatts. And we'd say, that's our capacity. We drive efficiency. I ran the data center, the hardware, the network, the supply chain, the budget management. I own that engine. So even when I owned that team, the best utilization we would get in those zones was 6 megawatts. 6 megawatts of 10 without redundancy. That means 40% of the capacity is never used. Now, when you extrapolate that across everything we've got, 7 million data centers, 105 gigawatts capacity globally, 594 terawatt hours of energy consumed, it represents 2.4% of the global energy draw. That's our portfolio for digital infrastructure. The issue is there's 37 gigawatts of capacity built that is never used. That is not a sustainable answer. So going back to, I think, what a few folks have said, we've built a whole bunch of capacity. Why the hell aren't we using it? So there's a metric, I put out an article about this, that we have PUE, it's the right side of the decimal. PCE is power capacity effectiveness. It's the left side of the decimal. I built X amount of capacity, how much am I using? Plain and simple. If you put that at the executive level and they start to see the utilization rates, they're going to ask the questions. The investors are going to ask the questions. Why am I spending another $100 million or $150 million on a data center when that's not used? That brings up the uncomfortable conversations with the tenants that are inside of that data center. That puts the onus back on the consumer itself. Again, on my side, when I was there, we have to have that conversation because, as I said, no matter what, we have to solve it together. The colo can't solve it, the end user can't solve it, the suppliers can't solve it. Like, we have to put all this together. So I think that's a very, very important one. And then the second piece is, I think there's a reality of us getting to renewable energy. And ironically, I was talking to Daniel about this earlier. 10 years ago, we built the world's first data center with primary power from fuel cells at eBay. We took out the generators and UPS. We ran 25 to 50 kilowatt cabinets inside of modular data centers. This is 2012, okay? We did that to prove a point, and it was super efficient. Now, we had 94% coal in Utah where this was done. That was the grid. We had no other options. So just by deploying natural gas in the fuel cells, we cut the building size in half. We reduced things by millions, tens of millions of dollars because we had less copper, right? Less everything. And then we had a more resilient energy source on site. This is the Bloom Energy, right? Fuel cells. And the resiliency calculations with it meant that we could now not have to have 3 layers of redundancy because the grid was unstable or the assumption it was unstable. We have to rethink how we're doing this when it comes down to how power is done. So that's the innovation is there are ways to get there as a stepping stone. We got to start with what we have right now because wind, solar, geothermal, places like Iceland, they've got it consistently. But other places are like this. We have to have base load covered. That means we need a stepping stone. And then we need to figure out how do we sequester the carbon from that point while we get towards 100% renewable energy.
Michelle?
Again, tough to follow because I would say we're very entrenched in using ambient air. And because we have data centers in all different regions, it's really managing the outside weather so that we can use it to our advantage. We've become extremely proficient at that. But there are new things out there. And, liquid cooling at the server level is one thing that we're exploring right now so that we can increase those efficiencies, deliver more power, and deliver more data. So high performance clusters are a big deal because, like we said, there's more demand for data. We have to be able to deliver more. So I would say the exploration is the liquid cooling at the server level for us.
Well said. Okay, the next question is Daniel, Melissa, and Sean in that order. Another section of our book we are working on together, and one that is attracting a lot of headlines lately, is renewable and clean energy solutions to help our digital infrastructure industry get greener faster. Of course, it depends on location, we mentioned that earlier, and available access to renewable or cleaner sources of energy. But any that you or your clients are actively utilizing with great early results. Daniel?
All Bloom needs to deploy is space and a fuel source. So we take location access completely out of the equation. And being independent from location provides a great setup for something we're seeing a lot of just a stone's throw from here, which is a scenario in which we all need more power to expand our operations, and the utility can't support that. So Bloom can come in, set our fuel cells up on your site, provide you electricity directly into your building, and solve that capacity constraint problem, all while doing it sustainably with a reduction in carbon intensity, as I mentioned earlier. So from that standpoint, we have a lot of opportunity, and Northern Virginia, thank you Dominion, is not the only region in which that's occurring, and I think it's pretty common consensus that we're going to continue to see capacity-constrained environments at an even greater rate than we are today.
Melissa?
Okay, today I want to not talk about what some people are doing, but an idea for what we could be doing together. So this is going to be a little bit new, but in the thought pattern of focusing more on production than consumption, I'd love to challenge our industry to think beyond the PPA, beyond the on-site power generation, and look at ways we could partner together to do more to produce. So thinking through that, came up with the thought of a renewable-driven microgrid co-op. And so if you hear me out and think about this, imagine if we looked at select cities, data center markets that are key, where there's already a power supply issue. If we could take some of those, band together and collaborate, we're all already working towards the same goals here. We're all already trying to solve for sustainability issues. This industry in particular has intimate knowledge of utility operations, power generation, grid integration, all of the key subjects we would need. And co-ops aren't a new idea. Certain rural areas still use them, like mine. And we would be borrowing from that. I actually think that an industrial co-op could be totally feasible once you work through some kinks. And if any industry could pull it off, it would be ours.
Awesome. Awesome. Sean?
So JLL finds digital dirt for some of the largest data center providers in the world, and I got to say right now it's an absolute arms race. It is, if any 50-acre plot we put out there with 50 to 100 megs of power capacity, it's gone. Multiple bids, highest bidder. It's crazy, and it really creates this paradox because those very same buyers all have board level sustainability goals and pretty aggressive ones. So at the same time, they've got publicly committed goals and aspirations to build to their shareholders at about a 20% CAGR, yet they've got these corporate goals really driving a focus on sustainability. So short market supply, huge demand, so buyers can't be picky. So what we're seeing is those pieces of land, which are one in deregulated markets, which makes it really easy to steer or buy contracts of power that are based on sustainables or most efficient forms of power to that site. We're seeing those pieces of land disappear the quickest. And we're seeing a lot of interest in nuclear and commercial nuclear as a primary grid form of power. We've been talking about it a bit. There's a sub-threat of private nuclear SMRs, but we're seeing clients very, very interested in back-end nuclear power all over the U.S. right now. This is in play because the sustainability numbers are really, really strong. To add on to what Melissa said, if there were an industrial renewable co-op available to feed power to a site, this would be of great interest. We'd have folks beat down the door to buy into that. So I think it's a fantastic idea.
Amazing. All right, I'm going to go right down the line, starting with Michelle. We can be quick with this response in the interest of time, but we touched on it earlier with Dean's response, and I think this is a good one. What is the one sustainability metric you wish our entire industry would embrace as a standard? Michelle?
The finite definition of net zero.
Define the definition of?
The finite definition of net zero.
Yeah, get us all on the same page, yeah. Daniel?
I'm not sure this counts, but I really like the concept of hourly matching for renewable energy.
Power capacity effectiveness, PCE. Simple enough.
I knew your answer. Sean?
Carbon avoided. Let's stop building new. Let's start reusing and retrofitting and recycling. Let's avoid embodied and operational carbon by doing this. Why not?
Yeah.
It would be finding a starting point for measuring Scope 3 emissions and rolling out, I would think, by category. Start, because there's too much to measure out there. If you look at every different material source, start with something that we can all agree on, water. And once you roll out the framework, then move concrete, then on down the line. Once that framework is built, and we agree on different categories to bucket within, as opposed to, eat the elephant one bite at a time, folks. It's just too big to look at the full picture.
I just did that strategy with my personal finances, by the way. It was helpful. All right, Kim?
So at Vern Global, we've actually spent some time thinking about how we should report in order to capture everything, but still not be too complex. So I'm going to have to disappoint you just a little bit. So we've got 6 metrics: PUE, WE, CUE, and Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. So if we all report on those, then we'll have something that is comparable. And if we're open about it and transparent, then we're going to have to take steps together because people will actually see, where we are and where we're headed.
Amazing. All right. Second to last question, guys. I see more and more headlines of investment firms putting up billions of dollars for companies with strong sustainability plans in place. I see this as an indication that in the next few years ahead, having a sustainability plan or even being net zero or negative will be a clear competitive advantage and eventually an absolute must-have, particularly for big buyers. Do you see this already happening? Are there any other financial benefits that are noteworthy for getting greener now? We'll come this way. So Kim, you're in the hot seat again.
Yes, I would say definitely over time, the priority of sustainability has been increasing. And what we're seeing now is quite often the cases when they require a sustainable location, they will still be talking about the price. So price will be more important, but sometimes we see cases where carbon neutral or a plan towards carbon neutral is an absolute must. You can't win the case if you don't have at least a plan in place. So this is a big difference from what we saw 4 or 5 years ago. You could kind of work yourself around it, if you will. So yeah, I think that's...
Melissa?
So I believe it's challenging to prove without a standardized measure in place. In general, organizations with a future goal in mind that are future focused care more about the long-term impacts of their decisions will yield better profits. The same was true of diversity many, many years ago. Companies that had a more diverse board showed ultimately more creativity and better profits driven at the top level. So taking that same approach, and for similar reasons, we should expect to see similar results. And in general, a company willing to invest in growing their products with future-focused approaches that balance, creativity as well as well-reasoned decisions, we might not get all of our sustainability efforts correct the first time. We will make mistakes, but better to fail forward than to not try at all. And that's the company I would invest in.
John?
All right, well, Melissa stole my answer, kind of, so I'll have to make something else up. So we run about 900 data centers across 200 million square feet of mission critical globally for our clients. Every single one of them wants to do the right things. Every single one of them has sustainability goals. What is missing, and whether it's a new build or retrofit, what is missing is a precise formula, the calculus that shows on the front end, although an investment may be higher for sustainable technology, at least for now, in the long run, it both saves you money and there's a goodwill effect. And quantifying both the savings for green investment and the hard savings in dollars and this goodwill effect. This calculator doesn't yet exist, and I know the private investment side of the business desperately wants this so they can do the right thing on the front end.
Dean?
I think Kim mentioned this before. It's a very different climate right now. 5 years ago, sustainability was still a nice to have. But if you look at the biggest funds in the world, they've all pivoted. That pivot is towards sustainable infrastructure, right? Sustainable investment, all the things, the money they're raising in those funds. So between that and now you look at the public commitments from the biggest companies in the world, those two are forcing functions. The fact that, the biggest tech companies in the world came out and said we're going towards net zero by X year, that's half of the infrastructure deployed around the world is just within those less than a dozen companies. So massive amounts of buying power, but they're being forced from their board level, from their investors, to actually act sustainably. So to answer your question, this is just a no-brainer at this point. It's just good business. Because in the end, if you can figure out sustainable answers, you're going to come up with more efficiency, you're going to save money, you're ultimately going to have a better product. So I think that those two forcing functions are what's different. The money that's funding it, the public commitments by the companies, and then the product companies, the one that want to win these different deals, are coming up with innovative, creative ways to go back and answer those requests. As I said, Scope 3 is 80% of the problem. No single company can solve this problem, period. I don't care who they are. It has to be together. So I think that the investment community has realized this. The biggest investment companies in the world, the BlackRocks, the GI Partner, just huge companies have pivoted to do this.
Have to do it together. Daniel?
So if you look at energy specifically, there are tax incentives available for data centers for anyone pursuing clean energy projects. And the Inflation Reduction Act has extended those investment tax credits. So something that Bloom would qualify for would be a 30% starting point, 30% reduction in the upfront capital cost of the equipment and installation. So in execution, you're bringing a clean energy project that has significant sustainability impacts as well as operational resiliency benefits closer toward grid parity in areas of the country, areas of the world in which you have less expensive electricity rates. But let's not forget that there are areas in the world, such as parts of Europe, such as the Bay Area in California, in which electricity prices are already so expensive that Bloom natively can come in and provide an economic uplift in addition to the sustainability and resiliency impacts.
Michelle.
So I'd have to agree with Dean that out there, the investment firms are looking for their investments to be very responsible, but our clients are also asking us to be very responsible. So it's a win-win situation from a trend perspective. You know, we're going to invest in doing the right things, and it improves not only our brand, but it improves our world.
Well said. All right, time for just one more question. And so I'm going to ask for a one-line response from our panelists. And again, we'll go Michelle to Kim. Last question. Looking into your crystal ball, where do you see our industry's overall carbon consumption by the year 2030, 5.5 years from now? Michelle?
I can only say significantly better from where we are today.
I too believe that the carbon intensity of the industry will decrease, and it will take creative new innovations, but it will also rely heavily upon technology solutions that are available to deploy today.
We don't have a choice but to actually do this by 2030, so get on board.
In the face of no let up in demand, I think with this incredible demand, I think we will continue to get smarter as an industry and become more green per megawatt and be good stewards of the environment.
I think we should also recognize our moment in history. For the very first time, to modernize and innovate is to decarbonize. Every single initiative from the dawn of time to provide inventions and innovations has combated natural forces. And for the very first time, we're trying to reverse that, work with our planet, and that deserves celebration. I think by 2030, we can do this.
I think that the boom in AI is not only driving data center capacity, it's also driving innovation. So innovation is going faster. There's more ideas, more solutions. So I'm thinking yes.
And I'm looking forward to your chapter on AI coming out in volume 2 of Greener Data. And talking.
Hey, Jamie, can I celebrate the fact that we made it to almost the end without saying AI? I'm sure the audience appreciates this.
Exactly. All right, guys. So I see our champagne coming this way. We love to toast here at JSA, especially to big celebrations. Again, I mentioned earlier, we are unveiling our second edition of Greener Data, Volume 2, Earth Day 2024, 11 and a half months from now. And we have a little surprise here for you today. We have the book cover that we're going to unveil for you. So without further ado, Alice, do you mind to help me?
Salud.
Salute. And we should say that's AI and human generated graphic right there. So peeking again into the future and what it's capable of. But we have 34 names confirmed. By the time we're done with this summer, all 40 confirmed authors will be released. And we are so appreciative of this industry embracing innovation, ideas, strategy, And thank you to those who always jump up and say yes when we ask the most difficult questions. I love you guys. Thank you. Salute.
Cheers.